What if I told you that one of history's most powerful rulers did not start as a prince, but as a captive with almost nothing? Sounds impossible, right? But it happened. This man rose from the very bottom of society to the throne of the Byzantine Empire, the richest and most dangerous superpower of its time. And he did not get there by luck alone. Stay with me, because this story is not just shocking. It can change how you think about power, ambition, and the history of empires. 1. A story that almost sounds fake. History is full of kings born into wealth, armies, and luxury. This story is the opposite. It is about Basil I, who became Byzantine Emperor in 867 AD. But he was not born in a palace. He came from a poor family near the empire's border. Several sources say he spent part of his early life in captivity under the Bulgars after one of the empire's violent border wars. Think about how wild that is. The Byzantine Empire was not a small kingdom. It was the eastern half of Rome that survived, and it lasted for more than 1,100 years. Becoming emperor there was like climbing from the street to the top of the world. And this matters for one big reason. In most empires, birth was everything. Your family name could open every door or shut them forever. So how does a man with no royal blood, no inherited army, and no noble title break into the most protected power system on Earth? And somehow it gets even more surprising. 2. Born at the bottom. Basil's early life was hard even by medieval standards. He was probably born around 811 AD in a region shaped by war, migration, and pressure from the empire. Life there was unstable. One bad war, one raid, or one political collapse could destroy everything. That seems to be what happened to him. During the Byzantine-Bulgar Wars, his family appears to have been forced from their home. Basil himself may have spent years as a prisoner or captive, living almost like a slave. Historians still debate some details in the later sources. But the main point is clear: he started with almost no status and no protection. You know what is really shocking? In the 9th century, moving up in society was very rare. A peasant usually stayed a peasant. A captive was usually forgotten. There was no modern way to reinvent yourself. There was only survival. That is why Basil's rise feels so unbelievable. Before he could rule millions, he first had to avoid becoming one more unknown victim of border warfare. But once he got free, where could someone like him even go? 3. Why Constantinople changed everything. The answer was Constantinople. If you had ambition in the Byzantine world, this city was the place to be. At its height, Constantinople may have had 300,000 to 500,000 people. That was enormous in the medieval world. It was richer, busier, and more politically dangerous than almost anywhere else in Europe. Now imagine arriving there with no title and no one to protect you. The city offered real chances: palace work, military service, support from rich or powerful patrons, access to important people, but it could also crush you. Big cities have always worked like that. They offer a new life, but they punish weakness fast. Basil reportedly found work linked to physical labor and service. He was strong, impressive, and useful. In a world where physical power still mattered, that helped people notice him. At imperial courts, skill mattered, but being seen mattered too. That became Basil's first real advantage. He may not have had a famous family, but he knew how to stand out. And soon that visibility brought him close to the kind of people who could change a life overnight. 4. The body, the beast, and the first big break. One of the most famous stories about Basil feels almost like a movie. Later accounts say he impressed powerful people with his great physical strength, especially in wrestling and handling horses. In one version, he tames a difficult horse connected to the emperor's circle. We cannot know if every detail is fully true. Some of it may be legend, but the meaning is clear. Basil's body became his first political tool. That may sound simple, but it mattered a lot. In many medieval courts, rulers surrounded themselves with men who were strong, loyal, useful in danger, personally intimidating. Basil fit that image perfectly. And here is the deeper point: in elite systems, your first opening is rarely glamorous. You do not begin at the top. You begin where others can use you. Basically, Basil's first career plan was not a resume. It was more like, I can out-wrestle your guards and survive a horse problem. His physical reputation helped him gain patrons. In an empire, a patron could matter more than money. Once a powerful person says, "Keep this man close," everything changes. And that is exactly what happened next. 5. The patron who boosted his rise. Now the story gets even more interesting. One major turning point in Basil's life was his connection with Danelis, a wealthy woman from the Peloponnese. She became one of his most important patrons. Medieval writers describe her as extremely rich. They may have exaggerated, but she was clearly powerful. And power was the real currency. Think about it. A poor man can have talent. A strong man can have presence. But a connected man can become dangerous. Danelis reportedly gave Basil resources, gifts, and support that raised his status in a major way. In a society built on patronage, this was not simple kindness. It was a fast way up. This is one of the biggest lessons in the history of empires. Rulers do not rise alone. Behind almost every self-made leader is a hidden network of supporters, brokers, and gatekeepers. Modern audiences often love the idea of the lone genius. History usually tells a different story. Basil had ability, yes, but he also had timing, relationships, and support from elites. Without that help, he might have stayed a useful strongman near power. With it, he moved into the palace world. And once you enter palace life, survival becomes a very different game. 6. Friendship with an emperor or something more dangerous. Basil eventually caught the attention of Emperor Michael III. This was the moment his life stopped being only impressive and started becoming dangerous. Michael III ruled the Byzantine Empire, but his palace was full of rivals, favorites, relatives, and ambitious officials. In other words, it was a political fire trap. Basil became part of the emperor's inner circle, probably because he seemed useful, loyal, and effective. That mattered. In imperial politics, rulers often trusted outsiders more than old nobles. Old nobles came with family alliances and hidden plans. A man like Basil looked simpler. But here is the hard truth: being close to power does not make you safe. It multiplies the risk. The closer Basil got to Michael, the more he was pulled into. Jealousy at court, fights between elite groups, questions about succession, constant fear of betrayal. And in Byzantium, betrayal was very real. Emperors were often removed, blinded, exiled, or murdered. So Basil had reached the center of the empire. But would that center lift him higher or destroy him first? 7. Palace politics got personal fast. This is where Basil's rise becomes almost unbelievable. At some point, he was pulled into the emperor's private political world. This included a very controversial marriage arrangement involving Eudokia Ingarina, a woman closely connected to Michael III. Historians still debate the exact emotional and political details. But one thing is certain: this was not normal family life. It was politics dressed up as family. Why does that matter? Because in empires, marriages were never just about love. They were tools to secure loyalty, to manage scandal, to produce heirs, to hide uncomfortable truths. Basil was no longer just a favored courtier. He was becoming tied to imperial legitimacy itself. Palace gossip in Constantinople probably made modern celebrity gossip look calm and healthy. Once you are tied to the ruler's personal life, every relationship becomes political. Every dinner becomes a negotiation. Every smile might hide danger. This is the moment when Basil stopped being the talented outsider and became a real contender. But one huge obstacle still stood in front of him, and removing it would change everything. Quick favor before we go on: if you are enjoying this story, hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell. That helps more people find deep history videos like this, and it helps this channel keep making bigger videos. Alright, back to Basil, because now things turn dark. 8. The man blocking Basil's path. That obstacle was Bardas, the emperor's uncle, and one of the most powerful men in the empire. Bardas was not just another court official. He was a top political operator. He had experience, strong connections, and deep roots in government. For Basil, that made him a serious problem. In systems with strict ranks, rising stars usually hit the same wall someone powerful sees them coming. That seems to be what happened here. By the mid-860s, tensions had grown. Basil convinced Michael III that Bardas was a threat. Then in 866, during a military campaign, Bardas was assassinated. Basil was almost certainly at the center of the plot. Let that sink in. A former captive had now helped remove one of the most powerful men in the Byzantine Empire. This is a brutal but common pattern in the history of empires. Access becomes influence, influence becomes threat, and threat often ends in violence. Was Basil defending himself, or was he always ruthlessly ambitious? Historians still argue about that. But one thing is clear: after Bardas fell, Basil's road to the throne opened wide. Then came the move that changed his title forever. 9. Crowned co-emperor. Soon after Bardas was removed, Basil was named co-emperor in 866. That changed everything. In the Byzantine world, being made co-emperor was not just a nice title. It was a public message: this man is now part of the empire's future. His image, power, and legitimacy all grew overnight. Think of it this way: Basil did not just get promoted, he was placed inside the living heart of Rome's surviving political system. And once that happened, survival became even more dangerous. Now every faction had to ask, should we support him? Should we fear him? Can we use him? Should we remove him before he becomes unstoppable? By this point, Basil had climbed farther than almost anyone from his background could have imagined. But in empires, second place can be more dangerous than being unknown. Number 2 is always one step from total power or sudden death. Michael III may have believed Basil was loyal. History suggests that trust was a mistake, because Basil's next step would not be negotiation, it would be final. 10. The night Michael III died. In 867, Emperor Michael III was murdered. Most historians agree that Basil was either directly involved or was the main force behind the plot. The details change depending on the source because Byzantine writers often had political goals. But the result is clear: Michael died, and Basil became sole emperor. That is the moment the impossible happened. A man of unclear and humble origin, shaped by captivity, labor, patronage, and palace politics, now sat on the throne of the Byzantine Empire, from captive to emperor, not in legend, not in a movie, in real history. And this matters for a bigger reason. Basil's story is not just about dreaming big, it shows how imperial power really worked. He used opportunities, aligned himself with patrons, removed rivals, and acted quickly when hesitation could have killed him. Was it admirable? Was it morally clean? Absolutely not. Was it effective completely? Still, taking power was only half the challenge. Many men could seize a throne. The real question was, could he rule? 11. Why people accepted him. This is the part many people miss. Taking the throne is dramatic, keeping it is harder. Basil ruled from 867 to 886 for nearly 19 years. That was a solid reign in a political culture where emperors were often overthrown. That alone shows he was not just a lucky assassin, he was a capable ruler. So why did the empire accept him? First, he brought back a sense of order after chaos. Empires often forgive ugly beginnings if a ruler brings stability. Second, he understood symbols. Byzantine rule depended on ceremony, religion, and public legitimacy. Basil used all of them. He did not act like an outsider for long. He acted like the emperor people expected to see. Third, he governed. He began legal reforms and strengthened administration. Some major legal projects linked to his reign helped prepare the way for the later Basilica, one of Byzantium's most important law collections. In other words, Basil did not just steal a crown, he built a government around it. That is when his rise stopped looking like a scandal and started becoming a dynasty. And yes, it gets even bigger. 12. The dynasty that outlived him. Basil did not just rule. He founded the Macedonian dynasty, one of the most successful ruling families in Byzantine history. This is huge. That dynasty lasted from 867 to 1056, almost 2 centuries. During that larger period, Byzantium saw major military recovery, cultural revival, and stronger imperial government. Historians often view it as part of a Byzantine Renaissance, meaning a time of renewal and growth. Think about the scale of that legacy. One man from the edges of society did not just climb the ladder. He changed the direction of an empire for generations. Here is why that matters. His reign helped make succession more stable. His legal reforms shaped imperial government. His dynasty became linked with revival, not collapse. His story showed that legitimacy could be created, not just inherited. That last point is everything. In the history of empires, legitimacy often looks ancient and sacred. But behind the curtain, it is built through victories, ritual, law, religion, and survival. Basil understood that better than many nobles born into privilege. But there is also a darker side to this story. 13. The propaganda problem. When someone rises this dramatically, we have to ask a hard question. How much of the story is true? Byzantine historians were brilliant, but they were not neutral. Many wrote to praise rulers, defend dynasties, or destroy reputations later. That means Basil's life comes to us through layers of politics, performance, and propaganda. Maybe he really was the heroic strongman chosen by destiny. Maybe some stories were polished to make his rise seem miraculous. Probably both are true in part. That does not weaken the story. It actually makes it more interesting. Empires do not just control armies, they control stories. If Basil needed legitimacy, then a dramatic origin story helped him. A humble beginning could make him seem chosen by God, favored by fate, or especially worthy of power. That is powerful storytelling, and empires have always understood that. So yes, we should stay skeptical. But even if we remove the exaggeration, the core fact is still amazing. A man from the edge of society reached the center and held it. And that leads to the biggest lesson of all. 14. What Basil's rise teaches us about empires. Here is why this story matters beyond one emperor. Basil I shows us that empires are not just giant machines controlled by birth. They are systems built from ambition, crisis, patronage, violence, reinvention. When institutions are strong, outsiders struggle to break in. When institutions are unstable, talented outsiders can become unstoppable. That is the pattern. You can see versions of it in Rome, the Ottomans, the Mughals, the Mongols, and other empires too. Again and again, the history of empires shows the same truth. Power does not always go to the best-born person. Sometimes it goes to the person who understands the system fastest and acts before everyone else sees the change. Basil's rise feels unbelievable because it feels impossible. But it happened. And maybe that is the most unsettling part. The wall between the forgotten and the powerful can look solid in stable times. But in chaotic times, it can crack within a single generation. And when that happens, history gets rewritten. So what did we learn? First, Basil I did not inherit power. He built his way into it. Second, empires run on more than bloodlines. They also run on patronage, image, and timing. Third, the people who reshape history often begin in places no one is watching. Now I want to hear from you what matters more in building an empire. A birth and legacy. Ans, B strategy and ambition. Drop your answer in the comments and tell me what else you want to learn about. If you enjoyed this, subscribe and hit the bell. And speaking of unlikely rises, in my next video, I will reveal something fascinating. You do not want to miss that. See you in the next one.